Hello, welcome to Alyssa Jean's Reviews, and this is my review for Star Trek Picard, Season 3, Episode 2, Disengage. Get it? Disengage? I hope not all the titles are going to be some kind of play on words from the Legacy Trek, but they probably will be, but you know, whatever. So, here I am. In the snowpocalypse here in my hometown. We don't get a lot of snow, but we've got hammered with snow, and I'm off work, so I have all the time in the world to do my review here. So, what I'm finding is these first two episodes are just really difficult to review and even more difficult to apply a number rating to, which I will attempt to do at the end of this video, and I did do it last week, but it's really hard to actually rate these episodes without the full context because these are part of a serialized season, and so therefore they are so dependent on the full context. They are so dependent on what comes later in the season as far as how good or bad or how much I like them or how much I dislike them. So it's just really difficult to review these. So the best that I can do is try to look at each of these episodes on its own, in a bubble. Look at the writing. Do I think there's anything particularly bad about the writing like there was last season? Do I think there's anything particularly good? Looking at the acting, looking at the character development, looking at the overarching plot and those sorts of things. And so far, I can't look at it and say that there's anything particularly bad that stands out. Not anything particularly amazing or great either, but nothing that is particularly bad. And that's kind of my starting place, is not wanting it to be really bad, because season 2 was really, really bad. So far, so good in that regard. So the other thing I've been doing is just, I've been trying to compare these first two episodes to the first two episodes of season 2, but not within the context of the entire season 2, but trying to put myself in that mind of how I felt about the first two episodes after they had first aired, before I saw episode 3 or 4 or anything else, before I saw the full season of season 2. What did I feel about the first two episodes? And when making that comparison, what I am finding is that I do have less trepidation about these first two episodes than I did about the first two last year. Now, last year I also wouldn't have said that there was anything particularly bad that stood out to me from the first two episodes, but I was a little trepidatious about this plot that they were doing. It seemed like a very overdone, tropey, the alternate timeline thing, and then we have to fix it by going back in time and making things right again. It also seemed a little choppy because I didn't understand why the timeline had changed at that point. And by episode 10, I still didn't understand why the timeline had changed because they never fucking explained that. But putting that aside, just looking at those first two episodes, I had trepidation because it seemed like a plot has been done many times. So I was like, okay, maybe they'll do something cool with it. Maybe they'll do something different. Maybe they'll blow me away. So I'll keep an open mind, but I'm trepidatious about the overarching plot. Whereas this year, I am not trepidatious about the overarching plot, mainly because I don't know what the overarching plot is yet. There's still a lot of unanswered questions. What exactly is Jack Crusher doing? Why do the villains want him? Why does Vadic want him? Why have all these people been chasing him? What has Dr. Crusher been doing all this time? Why did she reach out to Jean-Luc after 20 years all of a sudden? All these different questions that need to be answered moving forward to really determine what the overarching plot actually is. And also, of course, you've got the side plot with Raffi and her trying to uncover the mystery of who's behind these terrorist attacks, who stole those weapons, etc. So all of that still is to be determined. So I don't even know what the overarching plot is. So I don't know whether or not I should have trepidation about it. But that is an improvement over the first two episodes last year, where the whole idea of the plot gave me a lot of trepidation, and I was concerned because I just felt like it was an overdone trope, and I didn't know that they were going to be able to do anything new with it. In fact, as it turned out, they did do something new with it. They made it even worse than it's ever been before. So in that regard, I got the first 2 episodes of season 3 ahead of season 2. And I am actually going to go so far as to say that I think the deal is sealed, that this season has already cleared the very, very low bar of not being as bad as season 2. Now, it could still end up being bad. Again, that's a very, very low bar because season 2 is, in my opinion, one of the worst seasons in the history of television. So, to be better than that is not necessarily great. But I think it's already cleared that very, very low bar. Now, how good it ultimately ends up being, whether it's ends up being bad but not as bad as season 2, or for whether it ends up being mediocre, or God forbid actually ends up being pretty decent. All of that is yet to be determined. Now, I know I'm kind of talking about big generalized things and I've been rambling for a few minutes, but there is another big generalized thing that I want to talk about before I get into the details of the plot, because it's something that I wanted to talk about last week and just didn't have time to. I was kind of rushing to get my review out. And that is the fact that season 3 of Picard could be the greatest season in the history of Star Trek, and Star Trek Picard itself is still a failure as a series, because they had set out in the beginning saying, oh, we're going to do something different, we're going to break away from the Next Generation, we're not going to have any of those other characters come back except for Riker and Troy, but we're not focusing on them, we're going to have new characters, we're going to have this new, like, darker show where it's not going to focus on Starfleet, we're going to have a crew that's not a part of Starfleet, we're doing something different. And then season 2, they were like, well, let's just we're staying outside of Starfleet for the most part, but we're going to do an old Star Trek trope. And then season 3 is like, fuck it, let's just do Next Generation season 8. So that shows that it is a failure as a series because it did not accomplish what it set out to do. And all of the characters, original characters for Star Trek Picard, save one of them, is gone, is off the show, really for no reason in most cases. I mean, Rios and Girardi had their storylines kind of wrapped up, but there's really no reason Elnor shouldn't be here, or Soji. Why wouldn't she be in it? So it just shows that they've given up, they've realized that they failed, and they're just going to Next Generation Season 8, which begs the question, why didn't they just do this to begin with? So I just feel like watching these first 2 episodes, regardless of how good or bad I ultimately end up thinking that they're going to be, I feel like that this story that they're telling of the reunion of the Next Generation crew should have been how they started. They should have led with this. In fact, it should have just been like maybe a 1-season limited series. Here's the Next Generation reunion, and just go all in on that. And you didn't even need Picard seasons 1 and 2. Now, of course, it would play out differently because they are taking elements from the first 2 seasons. They're taking Raffi. They are taking the already established reunion between Picard with Riker and Troy and their daughter. So that's already there. They've already got some groundwork that they're pulling from. And the thing with Laris, which, God, I hate that relationship. But they're pulling from all of those things. So if they were to start here, they would have to do it a little differently. But I think they should have just started here. That's what I'm realizing. Regardless of how good or bad I ultimately end up thinking that the season is, I do think that the first 2 seasons were a waste of time at this point. Not a complete waste of time because of the data thing at the end of season 1 I did find very touching. So that was one worthwhile thing out of it. But for the most part, I probably should have started right here. Anyways, so I haven't even started getting into the details of my review. This is going to be a longer one since I'm off work and there's just a bunch of snow out there. So let me go ahead and start getting into some of the details. We're like 10 minutes into this thing. Okay, so getting into the plot a little bit. So it starts off with 2 weeks ago, so that would give us a little bit of a little character dive into Jack Crusher, obviously named after not his dad, but Beverly's first husband, which I have some odd choice of a name. I still think of Jack Crusher as being Beverly's husband and Wesley's father, so it's weird for me to refer to him that way. I wish they had given him a different name, but that's neither here nor there. That doesn't really matter. Anyway, so we get a little bit of kind of a deep dive into his character as much as we can in a couple of minutes. And he definitely comes off as, I would say, a Han Solo type, but British. so definitely kind of a charming, suave type of guy who is very manipulative and can talk his way around things, and sort of like the outrageous O'Connor, but British and way better. Like, I definitely find this guy immediately to be very charming, kind of drawn into this character. The actor is doing a really great job of drawing me into this character. So I did appreciate that they took a couple minutes to do that little backstory there, because I think it did go a long way of forwarding this character in just a couple minutes here, kind of giving us an idea of who he is as a person. And then we get back to the context of him being on the ship with Picard and Riker, where we left off last week. And Picard soon discovers that they are going after him specifically. So now they're trying to figure their way out of it. Meanwhile, there's this underlying thing that Riker keeps bringing up every once in a while that, why are we not talking about the elephant in the room here? Like, are you not seeing what I'm saying? Because this seems kind of obvious. Let's go ahead and let's start there. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. I had mentioned last week that it looked almost certainly that they were going to say that this character, who we now know is named Jack Crusher, is Jean-Luc's son with Beverly. And I said I wasn't a huge fan of that. One of the people in the chat on my live stream last week got my hopes up a little bit and like, oh, I don't think that's Picard's son. I think it's a red herring. I'm like, I hope you're right. But they were wrong. It's definitely Picard's son. I don't think this is misdirect. I don't think this is another Jason Vigo. I think that this is actually legitimately Picard's son. And I wasn't a huge fan just because that's very tropey. That's a Star Trek 2 thing. That's just the very overdone thing. Oh, I'm your father. I'm your son. I hate you. You haven't been in my life. Blah blah blah. It is not something that it's not a direction I particularly wanted the show to go in. And this goes back to even before this show aired, there were already rumors and theories that this guy was going to be Picard and Beverly's son. So now that that inevitable reveal has happened, I had already made my peace with it. I'd already been like, okay, they're starting from a low-level tropey place, but let's see where they go with it. And I'm going to distinguish this between this and what I said about season 2's first 2 episodes, where I said I had trepidation because it was a tropey thing. That was the overall plot, the whole plot, where this is just one aspect of the plot, so it's less important. So this could be tropey and crappy, but if the overarching plot is good, it's still good. So it's different, if you know what I'm saying. So, but I'm in that same place of, all right, I do really like this character and this actor, so they could actually make this work. I just want to know is, when the hell did Captain Picard and Beverly Crusher bang? When did that happen? When did they have sex? Was that after Nemesis? Are we to believe that happened sometime during the movie era? Yeah, I guess if Picard didn't even know he existed, then it would have to have been, around the time of Nemesis. Like, it would have to have been not long before they split up, and we're supposed to believe he's 20 years old, I guess. He seems like he's in his mid-30s, but I don't know. I don't know, unless they're going to say they had sex during the Next Generation era and she got secretly pregnant. Or maybe it's from season 2. Maybe they had sex in season 1. And then she had him when she was off in season 2. I don't know. I don't really get that. Anyways, ultimately, whatever, it's not my favorite, but I will see what they do with it because I do really like this actor, and I find this character to be really charming, like the British Han Solo that I am kind of enjoy so far. So we'll just see. We'll see. That's like what I'm going to say about this whole goddamn show so far. Is we'll see, because that's all I can say. um, let's touch on the Titan. I'm not going to go scene by scene by scene. That's just too much. So let's talk about the storyline on the Titan A, and the tension between Seven of Nine, or Annika Hansen, and Captain Shaw, Liam Shaw. We find out his name is, and I was concerned about this character last week, and my concerns have been alleviated. Quite a lot, because what I was imagining is the tropey evil captain, much like the evil admiral, and he was going to go flying around chasing after Picard and Riker, being kind of that adversarial captain, forcing Seven of Nine to do his bidding, or just throwing her in the brig, and meanwhile going, "I am going to get you, you're breaking the rules, oh," and chasing them around the galaxy, and being this really annoying side villain to the main villain. So we would have the main villain, Vatic, and then we would have this annoying side villain who's just chasing, kind of like the dude in the one that comes to mind immediately is the basketball dude in Stranger Things season 4. Go away, you're annoying, you're not even the main villain, you're just this annoying side villain. like but also just fall into that evil captain or evil admiral trope, and that's what my concern was, and those concerns were alleviated because I'm finding that even though this is kind of the Jellicoe-esque asshole captain, that he's a little more complex than that. What I am reading from this character is that when he says he wants to save the crew, that he is putting his crew first. We're putting 500 people at risk here just for these two people. He is genuine, but I also feel like in different circumstances, he would be willing to put his crew at risk because it's the right thing to do. I just think that he's butthurt and feels demasculized, because demasculated. What's the word there? Because Seven went behind his back. Because he didn't, this wasn't his idea. He didn't want this to happen, but it's happening against his will. And these two, fancy smancy, old admiral and captain who think they're all high and think they're all great and mighty, come in and undercut his ship. So it's bruising his ego. So I think that that's really his motivation behind him doing what he's doing. But you know what? Even though he does it kicking and screaming, he ultimately goes along with it. First, he goes along, well, we're already here, well, fuck it. Let's go and save these guys, whatever. He ultimately does go along with it. And at the end, even though Admiral Picard kind of has to take control, which I didn't know he had that authority because he's retired, but he does override the captain and start giving orders. Even though that does happen, Captain Shaw, rather, Captain Shaw does kind of, whether it, even if it is kind of, kicking and screaming, goes along with it. So I think that's a lot different than the expectations that I had. He's different from the, evil Commodore in the original series. I'm thinking of that Ultimate Computer episode where that guy was just unreasonably had a beef with Captain Kirk. I'm thinking of Admiral Pressman, whose motivation was, power, and it was really evil. It was really like, we have to destroy our enemies. Whereas here, I think Shaw is genuine in that he wants to protect his crew. He's also motivated by his own bruised ego, but that's a little different than the stereotypical like evil admiral trope. I think it's a little more nuanced. I think this character is turning out to be a little more nuanced than I first suspected, and I hope as they dive into that, I hope it becomes even more nuanced as the season moves on. And I'm actually quite enjoying the performance by this actor who, as I said last week, I'm not familiar with. He looks really familiar, but I looked him up on Wikipedia and I haven't watched a single thing he's ever been in, so I don't know why he looks familiar to me, but I do enjoy his performance so far. So that alleviated a lot of my fears. Now we have this confrontation with Vatic. I had said coming into the season that Amanda Plummer playing the villain was one of the things I was actually looking forward to, and she hasn't disappointed yet. I think she was delightfully evil and just kind of delightfully eccentric. And I just love her. She's like, "Oh, good afternoon," because it's afternoon here in space, and and the way that once they defy her orders and they try to run away, she's like, "This is great!" Like she's a child in a candy store. Like this is so much fun, woohoo! Like I love the way that Amanda Plummer plays that. Now my ultimate feelings on this villain again is a wait and see thing because I have no fucking idea what her motivation is. Her motivation could end up being dumb as shit. So I don't know what she's doing, who she is, how does she get this like super powerful ship. Like those are still things that I need to know before I can ultimately judge how much I like this character as a villain. But again, just looking at this episode in a bubble and just viewing this one episode, I'm enjoying it so far. We'll just see. Again, I'm just going to keep saying we'll see. We'll see where they take it moving forward. Now I do want to talk about the Raffi plot. I actually kind of do like that they're following up on her season 1 story, which was ignored in season 2. I know a lot of people don't like the whole, the fact that she has the seedy past doing drugs. As I said last week, that never bothered me. And they're kind of following up on her relationship with her son. This time she meets her ex-husband. And to see more about her putting Starfleet ahead of her family rather than the drug thing, which has been a common thing we have seen throughout Star Trek going back to Captain Kirk. It's hard to have relationships because they always put Starfleet first. So that seems to be a thing. But lives are at stake, and this is a really important thing. So I found that very interesting, and I love the character of Sneed. I thought his lobes were a little small. I don't know if that's just him or if that's the new look of the Ferengi. But I love this character. I watched the Ready Room where one of the producer guys were, not producer guy from Pitch Meeting, but one of the producer dudes who were some behind the scenes dudes. I don't remember if it was Terry Metalis. Anyway, they were saying that what they were going for here was a new kind of Ferengi that also stayed true to the original so that you didn't feel like they changed it too much, but also putting a new spin on it. And I actually thought that they pulled that off brilliantly. I really enjoyed this character quite a lot. I thought the actor did a really great job there, and I loved how he had the upper hand the whole time. He knew Raffi was lying the whole time, and we get to the reveal. I guess other people had predicted this because apparently last week the mysterious handler said something about a warrior, which I missed, went over my head, but apparently that was the dead giveaway that it was Worf. I feel like I should have known this. It should have been obvious. Yeah, I love that it turned out to be Worf, and he was like, "I told you to disengage." I think this is a great intro to Worf. I think it's very odd that they played the musical cue was the original Klingon music from the motion picture, and then also used a lot in Star Trek 3. Which is not something I would have associated with Worf. So again, like I said last week, I really stand firmly that they are going for the feel of the original series films. I know my brother and I have a slight disagreement on that. He felt like they were going for the next. He was seeing more of the Next Generation film vibe, but this just reinforces that they're playing the fucking music from the original films. So there was a couple other interesting musical cues when they were facing down with Vatic. They got very original series-esque. Oh God, I was gonna hum it, but now I'm forgetting how that music goes. But it wasn't exactly the same, but it was very similar to music that was in the original series. So. Interesting musical cues that throwing out there. And overall, this still has kind of that cinematic feel. It still feels much more like a film than the other two seasons of Picard. Now, one last thing I'll say before I get into the rating is that I do think that I was wrong about what I said last week, that the first 2 episodes would be one contained two-parter, and then we would move on. I still think they probably should have aired the first 2 episodes together, since that's how they aired them for the, the bigwigs, for the sneak peek crowd that got to go watch it in the theater. They got to see the first 2 together, so I still think they should have let all of us see that, but it wasn't as self-contained as I thought it would be, because there's no ending here. Like, it's still continuing on. I thought maybe we would have kind of a little ending, and then we would move on to the next phase, and that's not actually what happened now. It is just kind of one ongoing continuous story as we end here on another cliffhanger. And I saw the sneak peek of last week, and it's feeling very that is feeling really Wrath of Khan, chasing down in the, a ship chasing another down in a nebula. They don't have sensors and sensors and that kind of thing, and I'm here for it. I think that just watching that little sneak peek, I was like, that's exciting. I'm here for it. So again, looking forward to seeing what they're doing with this, and I can't make final judgment until I know what they're doing with this. So we'll see. Oh, one last thing, as I mentioned, I had this little nitpick. Actually, I do want to say before I get to the nitpick, I did enjoy the Titan crew, like the bald Vulcan. I almost feel like they already have more personality than the Discovery crew. But the one nitpick that I have is Ensign LaForge saying, "Well, my father always told me," like, no, don't do that. No. Don't do that. Don't do that. That is so heavy-handed. That is not natural. She wouldn't just naturally say, "Well, my father always told me," except the fact that her father is famous. We know who he is. So I was like, don't. I hope they don't go to that well too often. Although we do know that we will soon see Geordi on this show. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that. Anyways, I think that I can go ahead and wrap this up, this very long video, and give my rating out of 10 as best as I can. Okay, now is the very difficult time of this video where I have to somehow apply a number rating to this thing. Like, I'm just going to be slapping a random number out of nowhere. It's kind of arbitrary. And last week I gave it an arbitrary 9 because I thought that it was a good beginning to the story. It was very effective. It drew me in. I still feel very drawn in, and I still feel very engaged. So although I was going to come down off of that 9 a little bit, was my original thinking. But now that I've kind of talked through this, my rating out of 10 for this episode is another 9. I mean, why the fuck not? I don't know. I don't know what to give this. It's just so hard. I enjoyed it. I feel engaged. I'm into it. I want to see what happens. I want to know what the villain's motivation is. I want to know what Jack Crusher is doing. I want to know what Beverly has been doing. I want to know. So the fact that the show has kept me engaged and has prevented me from having the same trepidation about the overall plot that I had in season 2, I'm going to go ahead and give it a 9. This is still a 9 that could go way down if the show goes downhill, although I did say at the beginning, and I stand by this, that I feel it's already cleared the very low bar of being better than season 2. It could still go pretty far down, but for now, we'll call it a 9, because why not? I don't know. Alright, so join me on this ongoing adventure as I review each week of Star Trek Picard. I'll be back next week to review episode 3. And tomorrow night, for those of you watching this when the video releases, tomorrow night, February 24th, I'm going to be over on Enchantment of Eternity's channel. I'll be with my brother Marc, and we'll be talking about Star Trek Enterprise Seasons 3 and 4. That's 6 o'clock West Coast time, 9 o'clock East Coast time on Friday, February 24th. So I'll put the link to that in this description below so that you can go check that out if you would like. All right, everybody, I will see you soon. Goodbye.